Welcome back to Totally Pointless. I'm JT.
And I'm TJ.
Today, we're going to dive into, that's a tough one. The case of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka.
Yeah. A case that, well, it shook Canada, really.
It did. Before we get into it, though, quick shout out to our sponsor, Payment Solutions. Saving business owners money, one transaction at a time.
Definitely worth checking out.
For sure. So, this case, well, where do we even begin?
It's layered, that's for sure. So many aspects to it. The crimes themselves, obviously, but the impact, the ripples.
Yeah, the ripple effect. It's massive.
Yeah.
On the justice system, on Canadian society. I mean, it's a story that sticks with you.
Absolutely.
It's interesting because it didn't start with, like, Bernardo and Homolka together.
Oh, right.
It started years before.
The Scarborough Rapist.
Exactly. A wave of terror, really.
Scarborough, just outside of Toronto.
Yeah. Starting back in '87. Women being attacked near bus stops, parks.
Everyday places, suddenly feeling very unsafe.
And the thing is, the description. Clean cut, charming.
Someone you wouldn't look twice at.
Exactly. I read the police even interviewed him
Can you imagine?
during the investigation. And nothing.
Just blended right in.
It wasn't until, well, years later, with DNA.
That's the thing about technology, right? Changes everything. Forensic science. Completely revolutionized.
That they could finally connect him.
They had his DNA on file from 1990.
They couldn't connect it until '93. Think about that.
It really shows you how fast things were developing.
Chilling. Just chilling. The fear that must have gripped that community, knowing he was out there.
Absolutely.
So, Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, they meet in '87.
She was 17.
17.
A teenager. Drawn into, well, a nightmare.
It's hard to fathom how a relationship could spiral like that.
They fed off of each other's darkness.
Yeah. Amplified it.
It's disturbing.
And then, Tammy, Karla's younger sister.
That's where things take a truly horrific turn.
December 1990.
A twisted Christmas gift. That's what Karla called it.
She drugged Tammy
Intended for Bernardo to assault her.
while she was unconscious.
It went wrong. Terribly wrong.
Fatal overdose.
Ruled an accident at the time.
Imagine the devastation
For the family.
to lose a child. And then the
Truth. Years later, the videotapes. The
unbelievable.
real horror of what happened.
Just unbelievable. So we left off with Karla Homolka's plea deal. 12 years.
12 years for what
That's-
she did.
It's hard to imagine what the families,
This has been going through.
Leslie Mahaffy and Kristen French, their families.
Anger, I imagine. Betrayal.
A sense of injustice.
Absolutely. To lose a child and then this.
But
Yeah.
there's more to the story, isn't there?
There is the videotapes.
Right.
The tapes.
You mentioned them earlier.
They changed
To
everything
expose the truth.
about Karla's involvement.
She wasn't the cowering victim. Not like she portrayed herself.
She was a willing participant.
Active. In the torture. The murders.
So she lied
Yeah.
to the police to get a lighter sentence.
It certainly seems that way.
The tapes, the public outrage, it was huge. A slap in the face, really, to everyone who thought justice had been served.
So what happened then with
Yeah.
Bernardo? Did he still go to trial?
Oh, yes. 1995, he faced a jury.
Even with Karla's credibility shot?
Well, it was complicated. The tapes damaged her credibility for sure, but the prosecution, they were able to use parts of her testimony, corroborated by other evidence.
So some of what she said was still used against him.
Yes, it was a legal tightrope, really.
Wow. So what was the verdict?
Guilty on multiple counts. First-degree murder, kidnapping, aggravated sexual assault,
In the sentence.
life in prison, no possibility of parole for 25 years, and he was designated a dangerous offender. It's highly unlikely he'll ever be released.
Well, life behind bars.
Mm.
But even with that, knowing Karla Homolka served 12 years,
It leaves a lingering question, a sense of incomplete justice,
a lot of people felt her sentence was too lenient.
especially after the tapes came out.
Yeah. The plea deal. It became this huge...
Controversy, debate. It raised questions about the ethics of plea deals, the balance between securing a conviction, play, and true justice.
Right. Do you prioritize catching someone like Bernardo, even if it means making a deal with an accomplice?
Tough questions, no easy answer.
That forced Canada to confront some uncomfortable truths. about the justice system.
It did. It sparked a national dialogue. Plea bargains, victims' rights, how we deal with dangerous offenders.
It had a profound impact.
Absolutely.
So what were some of the specific changes that came about because of this case?
Well, a heightened focus on victims' rights. A growing recognition that the system needed to do more to support victims, their families, throughout the process, give them a voice, make sure their needs are met.
In the first part, we talked about how the families felt let down by the system, especially with the plea deal. Did that lead to any concrete changes?
Yes, it did. Their advocacy, along with countless victims' rights groups, led to significant reforms. Victims now have a stronger voice. In legal proceedings, they have greater access to support services. Their rights more clearly defined, protected.
That's something positive. To come out of such a horrific situation is like their daughters' legacies are intertwined with these changes.
It's a testament to their strength, their resilience, to channel their grief, their anger into something positive, something that could help other families going through similar ordeals. They turn their pain into purpose.
It's a reminder that even in the face of unspeakable tragedy, individuals can make a difference, can fight for change, leave behind a positive legacy.
And the plea deals, more scrutiny now, especially in cases involving violent crimes. The Homolka deal, it became a turning point, a reassessment of how these agreements are negotiated, whether they truly serve the interests of justice.
It makes you wonder if future plea deals will be approached differently, with more caution.
I think so. There's a greater awareness now of the ethical complexities, the potential for unintended consequences.
And then there's Karla Homolka's release, 2005.
Incredibly controversial.
A lot of fear.
Anger. Many felt she hadn't served enough time, that she was still a danger.
And her attempts to rebuild her life, living under different names.
Met with intense scrutiny, public outrage, the shadow of her past. It follows her.
Some crimes are so heinous, so ingrained in the public consciousness, forgiveness, forgetting, becomes almost impossible.
And Bernardo, he's still incarcerated, denied parole just recently, late 2024.
But there was controversy. Around that parole hearing, right? Something about the victims' families.
Being barred from attending. Initially, it caused a huge outcry, seen as insensitive, disrespectful, to deny them the opportunity to face their daughter's killer, to have their voices heard.
It's heartbreaking that even after all these years, they're still fighting for recognition, a sense of closure.
They were ultimately allowed to attend because of the public pressure, the advocacy of victims' rights groups. It's a small victory, but significant.
The pursuit of justice, it's an ongoing process. We have to remain vigilant, even decades later. And the trauma endures, not just for the victims, but the families, the community, society as a whole.
The ripple effects, they continue. A reminder of the darkness, the fragility of innocence, the need for constant vigilance in protecting the vulnerable.
We've covered a lot of ground, heavy stuff. This case, Bernardo and Homolka. It's important to talk about it, though, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a case that it stays with you, resonates, even decades later. It's a reminder of, well, the capacity for evil, I guess, but also resilience, the pursuit of justice, learning from the past.
So wrapping up the legacy of this case, what's the lasting impact on Canada? The justice system.
Well, the biggest thing, I think, how victims are treated within the legal system, a fundamental shift. More compassion, support, respect for victims and their families throughout the entire process.
We talked about how the families, Leslie Mahaffy and Kristen French, felt let down by the system, the plea deal especially. Did that lead to any actual changes?
Oh, absolutely. Their advocacy. And countless victims' rights groups, it led to some major reforms. Victims have a stronger voice now. In legal proceedings, more access to support. Their rights are clearer, better protected.
Something positive coming from something so awful. Their daughters' legacies connected to these changes.
It really is a testament to their strength, how they channeled that grief, that anger into something good, something that can help others, other families, going through similar tragedies, turning pain into purpose.
It's inspiring, really. Even in the face of such horror, individuals can make a difference.
Exactly. And plea deals, the way they're handled, more scrutiny now. Because of this case, the Homolka deal, it really changed things, a reassessment of how these agreements are made. Do they really serve justice?
It makes you think future plea deals, they'll be looked at differently now, more carefully.
Right. I think so. More awareness. the ethics, the
Right.
potential consequences,
Right.
unintended consequences.
Bernardo and Homolka. This case also changed how we think about dangerous offenders, how they're
Yeah.
managed. Bernardo's designation, dangerous offender, makes it unlikely he'll ever get out.
It's a complex issue, public safety versus the rights of the incarcerated. No easy answers. But this case, it brought those questions to the forefront.
This case, it had such a broad impact, beyond the legal stuff,
Yeah.
on Canadian society. That sense of security
Yeah.
shattered, evil lurking in ordinary places.
And it forced us to confront something, a darker side of human nature, the vulnerability in our communities. It led to more vigilance, I think, a greater awareness of the need to protect ourselves, each other.
And the conversations it started
Mm.
about domestic violence, the silence around abuse.
That's a big one. Karla Homolka, portrayed as a victim. At first, some people believed it. It shows how complex these situations are, the need for understanding, support, for people trapped in abusive relationships. We need to be vigilant, not just for ourselves, but for others, our neighbors, friends, colleagues. Speak up. When something seems wrong, challenge those. Harmful attitudes. Create a culture where victims feel safe to come forward, to get help.
This case, it makes you question so much. Your sense of safety, trust, even your faith in the justice system. A lot to process.
It is, but we can't shy away from these conversations. We have to talk about it, acknowledge the darkness, learn from the past, work together to make things safer, more just, honor the victims, make sure their suffering wasn't for nothing. Their stories, they remind us to never become complacent, never stop fighting for justice, never forget the human cost.
Well said. And that's it for our deep dive into this chilling case. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Thanks for joining us. It's been heavy, but important to remember, to learn, to keep seeking justice. Like, comment, and subscribe.
This one, it's personal for me. I was living just outside of Toronto when all this happened. It was so scary, so sad. Hearing about these crimes as a young girl.
Until next time, stay curious, but be careful out there.